The child's lips had already turned blue when Marcus Webb opened his cabin door at midnight. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, pressed between two elderly strangers who were shaking so violently they could barely stand. The old woman's eyes met his with something beyond desperation. It was the look of someone who had walked through hell to protect what mattered most. The little girl clutched a stuffed rabbit with frozen fingers and whispered the first words she'd spoken in months. "Please don't let the bad man find us." Marcus had spent 3 years hiding from the world. That night, the world found him anyway. Before we continue, tell us what city you're watching from in the comments. We love seeing how far these stories of courage and protection travel. And if you believe that sometimes broken people are exactly who God uses to save others, hit that subscribe button and stay with us until the end. You won't believe what happens next. Marcus Webb had been staring at the same page of his book for 40 minutes when Ranger's head lifted off his paws. The German Shepherd's ears rotated forward with that mechanical precision that always preceded something Marcus wouldn't like. 3 years of living alone together had taught Marcus to read the dog better than he'd ever read another human being. "What is it, boy?" Ranger didn't answer with sound. He stood, moved to the door, and released one low breath through his nose. Not a growl, not a whine, just information. Marcus set down the book he hadn't been reading anyway and listened. The wind had been howling for hours, the kind of cold that made the cabin timbers crack like rifle shots. -30 Celsius, the radio had said before he'd turned it off. Coldest night in 30 years. The kind of night that killed people who made mistakes. Then he heard it. Not knocking, something softer. Desperate, like someone using the last of their strength to announce they were still alive. Ranger moved closer to the door, positioning his body in that way he'd been trained to do back when he had a different handler, back when Marcus had a different life. The dog's tail stayed low, his shoulders squared. Whatever was outside, it wasn't a threat. It was something that needed protecting. Marcus grabbed the lantern and pulled open the door. The cold hit him like a fist. But that wasn't what stopped his breath. 3 figures stood on his porch, swaying like trees in wind. An elderly man with white hair frosted silver, his arm around an elderly woman who seemed to be holding herself together through pure will. And between them, wrapped in a coat 3 sizes too big, a little girl with dark hair and eyes that had seen things children should never see. "Please," the old woman's voice cracked on the word. "Please, we walked so far. We just need—" She didn't finish. Her knees buckled. Marcus moved without thinking, catching her before she hit the frozen wood. The old man tried to help, but his hands were shaking too hard to be useful. The little girl made a sound, not quite a cry, not quite a gasp, just the noise fear makes when it's lived in your chest so long you've forgotten any other way to breathe. "Inside. Now!" Marcus's voice came out harder than he'd intended, but there wasn't time for gentle. "Ranger, back!" The dog obeyed instantly, creating space. Marcus half-carried the old woman through the door. The man followed, limping badly, one hand pressed against his chest. The little girl moved last, her steps small and uncertain, like she was testing ice that might break. Marcus set the woman in the chair closest to the wood stove. She was tiny, couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds soaking wet, and right now she was damn near frozen solid. Her silver blonde hair had come loose from whatever pins had been holding it, and her face was lined with age, and something harder than age. Exhaustion that went bone deep. "Henry." Her hand reached out blindly. "Where's Henry?" "Right here, Dorothy. Right here." The old man lowered himself into the other chair with a grunt of pain. His lips had a blue tinge that Marcus recognized from cold weather training. Hypothermia. Stage 2, maybe stage 3. The little girl stood just inside the doorway, perfectly still, except for her shivering. She held a stuffed rabbit against her chest, its fur matted and worn. Her eyes tracked everything: the room, Marcus, the dog, but she didn't speak, didn't make a sound. Ranger approached her slowly, lowering his head, making himself smaller. The girl watched him, but didn't pull away. When the dog sat down in front of her, she blinked once. Her free hand, moving like it belonged to someone else, reached out and touched the top of his head. Something shifted in Marcus's chest. Something he'd kept locked down for 3 years. "I'm making tea," he said, moving to the kitchen area. "You're going to drink it. Then you're going to tell me why 3 people are walking through a blizzard at midnight." "Our car broke down." Henry's voice was rough, strained. 8 miles back, maybe 9. We tried to fix it, but the cold... He coughed, hard enough to bend him forward. Dorothy's hand found his knee. "Don't. Save your strength." Marcus filled the kettle and set it on the stove, his hands moving through the familiar motions while his mind worked through the logistics. 8 miles in this cold, with an elderly couple and a small child. They shouldn't be alive. "You didn't try to flag down help?" he asked. "Couldn't." Dorothy's voice was steadier now, warmed by proximity to heat. "Couldn't risk it." Marcus turned. "Why not?" Dorothy and Henry looked at each other. A whole conversation happened in that look, the kind married people have after decades together. Henry's jaw tightened. Dorothy's chin lifted. "Because," she said carefully, "we don't know who we can trust anymore." The kettle started to whistle. Marcus poured hot water over tea bags, added honey from his dwindling supply, brought 3 cups to the table. He crouched down in front of the little girl, who was still standing statue still with one hand on Ranger's head. "Hey," he said softly. "You cold?" She didn't answer, didn't even look at him. "Her name is Emma." Dorothy's voice carried an ache that went beyond physical pain. "She's our granddaughter. She's 6 years old, and she hasn't spoken in 4 months." Marcus glanced up. "Trauma?" "Yes." Henry took the teacup with shaking hands. "Among other things." Marcus stood, grabbed a blanket from the chest by his cot, and draped it around Emma's shoulders. She didn't react, except to pull it tighter with one hand, while the other stayed buried in Ranger's fur. The dog hadn't moved, hadn't so much as shifted his weight. He just sat there, solid and warm and present, the way he'd been trained to be for people who needed anchoring. "Drink the tea," Marcus said. "Slow. You warm up too fast, your body goes into shock." They drank. Color started coming back into their faces, though Dorothy's hands continued to tremble and Henry's breathing stayed labored. Marcus waited. He'd learned patience in another life, learned that silence made people talk when questions just made them defensive. It was Dorothy who broke first. "We need help," she said. "We need someone who doesn't care about money or politics or what's legal versus what's right. We need someone who'll protect a child, because protecting children is what decent human beings do." She met Marcus's eyes. "Your neighbor down the mountain, Mrs. Chen. She told us about you. Did you were military. Said you kept to yourself, but you were a good man. Said if we were ever in real trouble, you might be someone who'd listen." Marcus's jaw tightened. Mrs. Chen was 73 years old and made him soup once a month whether he wanted it or not. He should have known she'd do something like this. "I'm not..." He stopped. Started again. "I don't help people anymore. I'm not that person." "You opened the door," Henry said quietly. "You brought us inside. You're helping right now." Marcus had no answer for that. Dorothy set down her teacup. Our daughter died 6 months ago. Car accident, they said. Sarah was 34 years old, healthy, careful driver. She went off a bridge on a clear day with good visibility and new brakes. Her voice went flat. They ruled it an accident. Closed the case in 2 weeks. Henry picked up the thread. Sarah was divorced. Emma's father is Clayton Merrick. He's a real estate developer, very successful, very connected. Very angry that Sarah left him and got full custody. He hurt her, Dorothy said. Hurt our daughter. Never enough to leave marks where people could see, always just enough to keep her terrified. When she finally got the courage to leave, he promised he'd destroy her. Said she'd never be safe. Said he'd take Emma, and Sarah would never see her again. Marcus felt something cold settle in his gut. And after Sarah died? He filed for custody 3 months later. Henry's hand tightened around his cup. Said we were too old, too unstable. His lawyers found out Dorothy has early-stage Alzheimer's. Not bad yet. She still has more good days than bad. But it was enough. They're using it to declare us unfit. We have legal guardianship, Dorothy added. Sarah's will was very clear. But Clayton has money and lawyers and friends in the court system. Every time we think we have something documented, it disappears. Every time we try to file a complaint, it gets lost. And Emma... Her voice broke. Emma, still standing by the door, had started to rock slightly on her feet. Ranger leaned into her legs, steadying her. Emma was there, Henry said. The day Sarah died. She was in the car. They said she was buckled in the back seat and survived without a scratch. But she hasn't spoken since. Won't talk to therapists, won't talk to doctors. Just silence. Marcus looked at the little girl. Really looked. Her dark hair needed washing. Her clothes were clean but worn. Her face had that hollow look children get when they've learned that the world isn't safe and the grown-ups can't protect them. He'd seen that look before, on another little face, in another life. 2 days ago, Dorothy continued, Clayton's lawyer called, said the judge was ready to rule, said we should just make it easy on everyone and hand Emma over, said if we didn't, they'd have us declared incompetent and take her anyway. So you ran, Marcus said. So we ran, Henry confirmed. Took our car, headed north, figured we'd find somewhere to hide until we could think clearly. But the car died, and the cold came, and we saw your light. He paused. Mrs. Chen said you'd lost people too. Said you understood what it meant to protect what matters. Marcus's hands curled into fists. Mrs. Chen talks too much. She said you were a SEAL, that you knew how to handle situations when the system failed. I'm retired. But you remember, Dorothy said. Don't you? You remember what it's like when someone powerful wants to take everything from you and the rules don't matter anymore? Marcus turned away, stared at the fire, saw different flames, smelled different smoke, heard screaming he'd heard 3 years ago and every night since. I can't help you, he said. Please. Dorothy's voice broke completely. Please. We have nowhere else to go. No one else to ask. If you turn us away, he'll find us, Henry finished. And Emma will be gone. And whatever that man has planned for her, it won't be love, and it won't be family. The wind howled outside, the fire crackled, and in the silence, Emma made a sound. Not a word, just a small, broken whimper that cut through Marcus like a blade. Ranger's head lifted. He looked back at Marcus with those amber eyes that saw too much, understood too much. Marcus closed his eyes. You can stay tonight. That's all I'm promising."
"Thank you," Dorothy whispered. "Thank you, thank you."
"Don't thank me yet." Marcus opened his eyes. "In the morning, we figure out what comes next. Right now, you need sleep and warmth. I've got a loft upstairs, 2 bedrooms. You and Henry take one, Emma takes the other."
"Where will you sleep?" Henry asked.
"I don't sleep much anyway." He helped them upstairs, Henry moving slow, Dorothy leaning heavily on the railing. Emma followed like a ghost, still clutching that rabbit, still silent. When Marcus showed her the small bedroom with the narrow bed and the quilts his mother had made, she looked at him with those huge, dark eyes, and he had to turn away before the memories dragged him under. "Ranger," he called. The dog bounded up the stairs. "Stay with her." Ranger moved into Emma's room and lay down beside the bed. The little girl climbed under the covers, fully dressed, rabbit and all, and stared at the ceiling. After a moment, her small hand dangled over the edge of the mattress and rested on Ranger's head. Marcus pulled the door most of the way closed and went back downstairs. He sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the wind and the fire and the old couple's exhausted breathing from upstairs. His hands shook, not from cold, from rage that had nowhere to go. A powerful man hunting a child. A dead mother with an accident that wasn't an accident. An elderly couple with no options and no allies. And a little girl who'd learned to keep quiet because speaking didn't save you anyway. Marcus had joined the SEALs to protect people, had believed in the system, in justice, in the idea that good guys could win if they were strong enough and smart enough and brave enough. Then his wife and baby daughter had died while he was overseas, killed in a home invasion that the police said was random, but that Marcus knew in his bones was revenge. Someone he'd taken down had sent someone to take from him. And the system had done nothing. Called it closed, moved on. So Marcus had moved on too, to this mountain, to this silence, to this life where he didn't have to care about anyone or anything except surviving until tomorrow. But now there was a little girl upstairs who looked like his daughter. An old couple who'd walked through a blizzard rather than give up. And a man with power who thought he could take whatever he wanted. Marcus stood and walked to the window. Outside, the storm was easing. By morning, the sky would be clear. By morning, someone might come looking. His reflection stared back at him, older than his 42 years, harder than he'd ever planned to be. "You're not that person anymore," he told his reflection. Upstairs, Emma whimpered in her sleep. Ranger's soft whoof of comfort drifted down through the floorboards. Marcus turned from the window. Maybe he wasn't that person anymore. But maybe, just for one night, he could remember how to be. He spent the next hour checking the perimeter, setting up the motion sensors he'd installed after moving here, making sure the generator was fueled and ready. When he came back inside, he found Dorothy standing in the kitchen, wrapped in one of his blankets. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Me either." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Dorothy spoke, her voice so soft he almost missed it. "I'm forgetting things," she said. "Not big things yet, just moments. Names sometimes." "What day it is? But it's getting worse, and I know it's getting worse, and Henry knows it, and that man's lawyers know it." She looked at Marcus. "I won't always be able to protect her, but right now, today, I still can. I just need someone to believe me when I say Sarah's death wasn't an accident. Someone to believe me when I say that man is dangerous. Can you do that? Can you just believe an old woman who's losing her mind?" Marcus thought about his wife's last phone call, the fear in her voice, the way she'd said, "Something's wrong," and he'd told her it was nothing. He'd be home soon. Everything would be fine. Everything hadn't been fine. "Yeah," he said. "I can believe you." Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. "She draws pictures, Emma. She won't talk, but she draws. Last week, she drew Sarah's car going off a bridge, and there was another car behind it. A black car. Pushing." Marcus's blood went cold. "You still have the picture?" "In my bag." "Tomorrow, I want to see it." Dorothy nodded, started to leave, turned back. "You lost someone too, didn't you? That's why you're up here alone." Marcus didn't answer. "Whoever they were," Dorothy said gently, "they'd want you to help us. They'd want you to be the person you were before the world broke your heart." She went back upstairs. Marcus stood alone in the kitchen, hands gripping the counter, breathing hard. He'd spent 3 years telling himself that staying away from people kept them safe, that his presence brought danger, that the best thing he could do was disappear. But that little girl upstairs hadn't chosen danger. She'd been born into it. And running from his own pain wouldn't save her from hers. Ranger appeared at the top of the stairs, looking down at him. "She okay?" Marcus asked. The dog's tail wagged once. Then he went back to Emma's room. Marcus walked to the closet and pulled out the box he hadn't opened in 3 years. Inside were his old gear, his contacts, his files, everything he'd told himself he'd never need again. He opened his laptop and started typing. Names, dates, patterns. By the time the sun started thinking about rising, Marcus had a list of questions and the beginnings of a very bad feeling. Clayton Merrick owned 14 properties in 3 states. He'd been married twice before Sarah, both marriages ending in quiet divorces with sealed records. He donated heavily to political campaigns and sat on the board of 2 child welfare organizations. On paper, he looked like a pillar of the community. But Marcus had learned a long time ago that monsters didn't wear signs. They wore suits and smiles and influence. Upstairs, Emma cried out in her sleep. Marcus heard Ranger's low rumble of comfort, heard Dorothy's footsteps moving to check on her granddaughter. And Marcus made a decision he'd sworn he'd never make again. He was going to find out what really happened to Sarah Merrick. He was going to find out who Clayton Merrick really was. And if the system wouldn't protect Emma, Marcus would. The sun broke over the ridge, turning the snow to gold. Marcus closed his laptop and looked out at the new day. Somewhere, in a warm house with expensive lawyers, Clayton Merrick was probably having coffee, probably making plans, probably assuming that an old couple and a mute child couldn't possibly fight back. He didn't know about Marcus Webb yet, but he would. Emma came downstairs first, moving like a small shadow, with Ranger pressed against her side. She held the stuffed rabbit in one hand and had the other buried in the dog's fur. Marcus was already up, had been up, coffee going cold in his hand, while he stared at search results he wished he hadn't found. Dorothy followed minutes later, looking steadier than she had last night, but still fragile in the morning light. Henry came last, his limp more pronounced, his breathing still labored. "We need to talk," Marcus said. "All of it. Everything you haven't told me." Dorothy and Henry exchanged that look again, the one that carried years of shared pain. Henry nodded. Dorothy sat down at the table and pulled a worn manila envelope from her bag. "Sarah kept records," Dorothy began. "She was smart that way. Started documenting everything the day she filed for divorce." She spread papers across the table. Photos of bruises, recordings of his threats,
text messages where he said he'd make her disappear if she tried to take Emma.
Marcus picked up one of the photos. A young woman with Emma's dark hair and delicate features, her arm showing finger-shaped bruises. The date stamp read 2 years ago.
She went to the police 4 times, Henry said. Each time they took a report. Each time, nothing happened. Clayton's lawyer would call it a domestic dispute, say Sarah was unstable, claim she was making it up for custody leverage.
The 5th time she went, Dorothy continued, her voice shaking now. The officer who took the report told her she should be careful about making false accusations against prominent citizens. Said it could backfire. Said she could lose Emma if she kept pushing. Marcus felt his jaw tighten.
When did she file the restraining order?
March 15th. Dorothy's finger traced the date on a court document. Judge granted a temporary order, scheduled a hearing for April 1st to make it permanent.
And the accident? Marcus already knew, could feel it coming. March 28th. Henry's voice went flat. 4 days before the hearing. She was driving Emma to school, went off Harper's Bridge on a clear morning. They said she must have swerved to avoid an animal, said the car went through the guardrail and into the water. Said Sarah drowned, but Emma's car seat kept her above water until help arrived. Dorothy opened another folder with shaking hands.
This is what the police report says. Single vehicle accident. No evidence of foul play. Case closed. And this, Henry added, pulling out a separate page, is what the mechanic told us off the record 3 weeks later. Said he wasn't supposed to say anything, but he pulled the car from the river. Said the brake lines looked clean cut. Too clean. Not worn through. Cut. Marcus took the paper. Photocopied notes in someone's hurried handwriting. Brake lines severed. Fluid reservoir empty. Someone knew what they were doing. Did you take this to the police?
We tried.
Dorothy's hands twisted together.
The detective said the mechanic was mistaken. Said saltwater corrosion could look like anything after 2 weeks submerged. Said we were grieving and looking for someone to blame.
3 days later, Henry said, the mechanic called us. Said his shop had been visited by building inspectors. Suddenly had 6 violations he needed to fix or they'd shut him down. Said he couldn't help us anymore. Said he had a family to feed. Marcus stood and paced to the window. Outside, the morning was bright and cold and beautiful. Inside, his blood was heating to a simmer. Clayton filed for custody when?
June 10th, Dorothy said. Gave us 3 months to bury our daughter and try to help Emma cope. Then his lawyer showed up with papers saying we were too old, too unstable, that Emma needed a father's financial security and emotional stability.
Emotional stability, Marcus repeated. From the man who threatened to make her mother disappear? The court didn't hear about that, Henry said bitterly. All of Sarah's documentation, her protective order petition, everything she'd filed. It was sealed when she died. Clayton's lawyer said it was to protect Emma's privacy. The judge agreed. Marcus turned back. What about Emma's therapist? Someone had to be documenting her trauma. Dorothy's face went pale.
Dr. Patricia Moore.
She saw Emma twice a week for 3 months after Sarah died. Wrote in her reports that Emma was showing signs of severe trauma, possible PTSD, that she'd witnessed something that terrified her into silence. And then, Clayton's lawyer subpoenaed the records for the custody hearing. A week later, Dr. Moore called us. Said she'd been asked to revise her assessment. Said her supervisor suggested Emma's selective mutism was likely due to unstable home environment with elderly caregivers, not trauma related to her father. Said if she didn't revise it, she'd lose her position at the clinic. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest.
Did she revise it?
She had student loans and a mortgage.
Dorothy's voice carried no judgment, just tired acceptance. She revised it. Then she quit the clinic and moved 2 counties over, sent us a letter apologizing, said she couldn't live with herself, but she couldn't fight the system either. Emma made a small sound.
Marcus looked down to find her standing beside him, the rabbit dangling from one hand. Her dark eyes were fixed on his face with an intensity that made his breath catch. "It's okay, sweetheart," Dorothy started to say. But Emma wasn't looking at Dorothy. She was looking at Marcus, and slowly, deliberately, she held up the rabbit. Marcus crouched down to her level. "You want to show me something?" Emma didn't nod, didn't speak, but she turned the rabbit around so Marcus could see its back. Someone had sewn a small pocket into the stuffing. Emma's fingers, small and precise, opened the pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Marcus took it carefully, unfolded it, felt the world tilt. It was a child's drawing in crayon, a blue car, a bridge, and behind the blue car, drawn in heavy black strokes, another car, bigger, pushing. In the corner, rendered with disturbing clarity for a 6-year-old, was a man's face, hard features, cold eyes. "When did she draw this?" Marcus asked. 2 weeks after Sarah died," Henry said quietly. "We found it in her room. There've been others. She draws them at night sometimes, then hides them." Marcus looked at Emma. "Is this what you saw, sweetheart? Is this what happened?" Emma's hand tightened on Ranger's fur. Her mouth opened, closed. No sound came out, but her eyes screamed everything her voice couldn't. "We're going to town," Marcus said, standing. "We need allies. We need people who'll actually listen." "It's risky," Henry warned. "If Clayton finds out where we are." "He probably already knows." Marcus moved to his closet, pulled out a jacket. "You don't run an operation this clean without having people watching. But hiding won't help Emma. We need evidence. We need witnesses. We need someone in authority who still gives a damn about the truth." Dorothy stood. "There's a public defender, Rachel Torres. She helped Sarah file the restraining order. She was the only one who seemed to actually believe her." "Then we start there." 20 minutes later, they were in Marcus's truck, heading down the mountain road. Emma sat between Dorothy and Henry in the back seat, Ranger's head resting on her lap. Marcus drove, with his eyes constantly checking the mirrors, his mind running through tactical assessments he'd thought he'd never need again. The town appeared gradually, small and neat and normal-looking, the kind of place where people knew their neighbors, and crime was supposed to be something that happened in cities. Marcus knew better. Evil didn't need big populations. It just needed opportunity and silence. He parked in front of a brick building with a faded sign reading County Legal Aid. Inside, the heating was fighting a losing battle against drafts, and the waiting area smelled like old coffee and stress. The receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" "We need to see Rachel Torres," Marcus said. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but we have a child who witnessed her mother's murder, and a custody case that needs to stop before someone else dies." The receptionist's eyes widened. She picked up the phone. "Let me see if she's available." 5 minutes later, a woman in her late 30s emerged from a back office. She was tall and slim, dark hair pulled back, eyes sharp with intelligence and exhaustion. She wore slacks and a sweater that had seen better days, and she carried herself like someone who'd learned to fight battles she usually lost. "Dorothy? Henry?" Rachel Torres's professional mask slipped into genuine shock. "I heard you'd left town. Where have you been?" "Surviving," Dorothy said simply. "This is Marcus Webb. He's helping us." Rachel's eyes assessed Marcus in one quick sweep. Military bearing, alert posture, protective positioning near Emma. Helping how? By asking questions the police didn't ask, Marcus said, starting with Sarah Merrick's break lines. Rachel's face went very still. She glanced around the waiting area, then gestured toward her office. Come with me, now. Her office was tiny and cluttered, law books stacked on every surface, files threatening to avalanche off the desk. She closed the door and turned to face them. I can't officially take this case, she said immediately. Clayton Merrick is represented by Dalton and Kane. They're the biggest firm in 3 counties. I'm a public defender drowning in caseload with a budget that doesn't cover decent coffee. I have no resources to fight them. But, Marcus heard it in her voice. Rachel's jaw tightened. But Sarah Merrick came to me 6 weeks before she died. Sat in that chair and told me everything. Showed me the bruises, the threats, the pattern. I believed her. I helped her file the protective order. I told her we'd fight for her and Emma and she'd be safe. Her voice cracked. 2 weeks later, she was dead. And I've had to live with the fact that I promised protection I couldn't deliver. The break lines, Marcus pressed. Did you know? I suspected. Rachel pulled a file from her locked drawer. This is everything I kept. Copies of Sarah's documentation, my own notes, contacts she gave me. I couldn't do anything official without proof, but I knew something was wrong. The accident was too convenient. The case closed too fast. And then... She stopped, took a breath. And then what? Dorothy asked. 3 nights after the funeral, someone broke into my car. Didn't steal anything, just left a note on the seat. Accidents happen to lawyers, too. I filed a police report. Nothing came of it. Rachel looked at Emma, who was standing very still beside Ranger. I should have fought harder. I should have done something. You're doing something now, Marcus said. What do you know about Deputy James Chen? Rachel blinked at the change of subject. Chen? He's young, maybe 5 years on the force. Straight arrow. Doesn't play politics. Why? Because we need someone in law enforcement who isn't compromised. Someone who'll look at evidence without deciding it's inconvenient. Chen might listen, Rachel said slowly. But he's low rank. He can't reopen a closed case on his own. He can if the case was never properly investigated in the first place. Marcus pulled out his phone. And he can definitely document new threats against witnesses. Rachel stared at him. What new threats? The ones that are going to start happening as soon as Clayton figures out where we are. Marcus met her eyes. I was a SEAL, Miss Torres. I've run operations in places where the bad guys had money and power and connections. I know how men like Clayton Merrick operate. They rely on fear and silence. But they make mistakes when they get nervous. And right now, with Dorothy and Henry suddenly off the grid with Emma, he's nervous. As if summoned by the words, Dorothy gasped. She'd been looking out the window at the street below. That car, the black SUV. It just drove past for the 3rd time. Marcus was at the window in 2 strides. He caught the tail end of a dark vehicle, windows tinted, moving slowly through downtown traffic. How long have you been watching? He asked. Since we parked, Dorothy said. I thought I was being paranoid, but you're not. Marcus pulled out his phone and snapped a photo of the license plate as the SUV circled back. Rachel, call Deputy Chen. Tell him we need to meet somewhere public, somewhere with witnesses. Rachel was already dialing. This is Rachel Torres from Legal Aid. I need to speak with Deputy Chen. Yes, it's urgent. It's regarding the Sarah Merrick case. A pause. I know it's closed. That's why we need to talk. While Rachel coordinated, Marcus knelt in front of Emma.
The little girl was trembling, her face pale. Ranger pressed against her legs, solid and warm. "Emma," Marcus said softly. "That car outside."
"Have you seen it before?" Emma's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes went wide with terror.
"It's the bad man,"
Dorothy whispered.
"Oh God, he found us already."
Henry moved to the window, his face grim. "How? We've been so careful." Marcus's mind raced through possibilities. Cell phones. He'd made Dorothy and Henry turn theirs off. Credit cards. They hadn't used any. The truck wasn't registered to this address, which meant... "Your car," he said sharply. "The one that broke down. Did you call anyone? AAA? A tow service?" Henry's face went white. "The night we left. Before the car died completely. I called our insurance company's roadside assistance. Gave them our location. And your phone? Still in the car. We left it because you said they triangulated your last position and worked outward." Marcus cursed. "Clayton's people probably checked every road within a 20-mile radius, found your car. Started showing Emma's photo around, asking if anyone had seen an elderly couple with a child. Someone talked.
"Mrs. Chen," Dorothy said miserably. "She's the only one who knew we might come to you."
Don't blame her. She was trying to help. Marcus pulled Dorothy away from the window. "But we're exposed now. We need to move." Rachel hung up her phone.
"Chen will meet us at Franklin Park in 20 minutes. It's public, lots of foot traffic on Sundays. He said to bring everything we have."
"Then we go now. Back door." They moved through the building's rear exit into an alley that smelled like garbage and old snow. Marcus kept Emma close, Ranger moving in protective formation. The black SUV was nowhere in sight, but Marcus's instincts were screaming. They reached the park 15 minutes later. Families were out, despite the cold, children on swings, couples walking dogs. Normal life, oblivious to the violence circling at its edges. Deputy James Chen was waiting on a bench near the playground. He was younger than Marcus expected, maybe 30, Asian features, careful eyes. He wore his uniform with precision and stood when he saw them approaching. "Miss Torres," he nodded, then looked at Marcus. "And you are?" "Someone who asks inconvenient questions," Marcus said. "How much did Rachel tell you?" "Enough to make me take my lunch break in a park." Chen's eyes moved to Emma, softened slightly. "This is Emma Merrick?" Dorothy's hand tightened on Emma's shoulder. "Yes." Chen crouched down, keeping his distance, making himself less threatening. "Hi, Emma. I'm Deputy Chen. I'm here to help if I can." He looked up at Dorothy and Henry. "I remember your daughter's case. I was first responder to the scene. I know when I asked about checking the vehicle's mechanical systems, I was told it wasn't necessary. I know I wrote in my report that the child appeared traumatized beyond normal accident shock, and that observation was removed before the file was finalized." "By who?" Marcus asked. "I don't know. But my sergeant made it clear that asking more questions about Clayton Merrick's family tragedy would be bad for my career." Chen's jaw tightened. "I've been a cop for 5 years. I became a cop because I believed in protecting people. But I have student loans, and I'm the only one supporting my mother, and He stopped. "I should have pushed harder." "You're here now," Marcus said. "That's what matters." Chen pulled out a notepad. "Tell me everything. Start from the beginning." For the next 20 minutes, Dorothy and Henry laid out the whole story. Sarah's abuse, the documentation, the protective order, the accident that wasn't an accident, the custody case, the mechanic's silenced testimony, Dr. Moore's forced revision of her assessment. Chen wrote it all down, his face growing grimmer with each detail. Then Emma moved. She pulled away from Dorothy, walked straight to Chen, and held up her drawing. The one showing the black car pushing the blue car off the bridge. Chen took it carefully, stared at it for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes were hard. "This is what you saw?" he asked Emma gently. Emma nodded. Once. Definite. "And you remember the car? The one that pushed your mother?" Another nod. "Was it?" Chen pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then showed Emma the screen. "Was it like this?" Emma's reaction was immediate and visceral. She stumbled backward, a strangled sound escaping her throat. Ranger was there instantly, pushing between her and the phone. Dorothy grabbed Emma, pulled her close. "What did you show her?" Marcus demanded. Chen turned the phone. It showed a black SUV. The same make and model that had been circling the legal aid building. "Registration traces to a private security company," Chen said quietly. "The same company Clayton Merrick uses for corporate protection. The same company that provided security at Sarah Merrick's funeral." The world seemed to slow down. Marcus felt pieces clicking into place. "They've been following her since her mother died," he said, "making sure she stays silent, making sure she stays terrified. Or making sure they know where she is when they need to tie up loose ends," Rachel added, her voice shaking. Chen was already on his radio. "This is Unit 7. I need a registration check on a vehicle, possible harassment of witnesses." "Wait!" Marcus grabbed his arm. "Who are you calling?" "Dispatch. I need this on record." "And who controls dispatch? Who decides what gets recorded and what gets lost?" Marcus held Chen's gaze. "You said yourself the investigation was buried." "You think the department isn't compromised?" Chen's face went pale. "You're saying—" "I'm saying Clayton Merrick has enough money to buy silence from a lot of people. Mechanics, therapists, maybe cops, maybe dispatchers, maybe whoever needs to be bought." Marcus released his arm. "We document this ourselves. Photos, timestamps, witnesses. We build a case so clean that even dirty cops can't bury it." "That could take weeks," Rachel protested. "We don't have weeks. The custody hearing is in 4 days." "Then we have 4 days," Marcus said. "Chen, can you file an emergency motion to delay based on new evidence?" "I'm not a lawyer." "But I am," Rachel cut in. "If Chen files an official report documenting Emma's identification of the vehicle and her clear trauma response, I can use that to request a delay. It won't stop the hearing permanently, but it might buy us time." "Do it," Marcus said. "Dorothy, Henry, you're staying at my cabin. No more town trips without escort." "Emma doesn't leave the property. Ranger stays with her every second." "What about you?" Dorothy asked. "I'm going to have a conversation with the mechanic who pulled Sarah's car from the river. And then I'm going to find out who else Clayton Merrick has been paying for silence." "Marcus," Henry started. "I know how to handle men like this," Marcus said. "I've been doing it my whole career. The only difference is, now it's personal." Chen met his eyes. "If you're planning to do anything illegal, I'm planning to ask questions. Perfectly legal questions. If people get nervous and make mistakes, that's on them." A car engine revved nearby. Everyone turned. The black SUV was parked across the street, windows still tinted, engine running. Just watching. "Get them out of here," Marcus told Chen. "Now." Chen didn't argue. He moved Dorothy, Henry, and Emma toward his patrol car. Rachel started to follow, then turned back. "Be careful," she said to Marcus. "Clayton doesn't just destroy people legally. Sarah's not the only one who's ended up dead around him. There have been others. Witnesses who changed their minds. Business partners who had accidents." "I'll be careful," Marcus promised. He watched them drive away, then turned and walked straight toward the black SUV. The engine cut off as he approached.
The window rolled down. A man in his 40s, professional haircut, cold eyes, sat in the driver's seat. "Can I help you?" the man asked pleasantly. "You can tell your boss that Emma Merrick is under protection now," Marcus said calmly. "You can tell him that his surveillance has been documented by law enforcement. And you can tell him that if anything happens to that little girl or her grandparents, there are people who make sure the truth comes out. All of it. Every threat. Every payoff. Every suspicious accident." The man's smile didn't waver. "I think you're confused. I'm just lost, looking for an address."
"Then I'll help you find it." Marcus pulled out his phone and took a photo of the man's face, the vehicle's interior, the license plate. "There. Now you're documented. Have a nice day." He walked away without looking back, heard the SUV's engine start, heard it pull away, and knew with absolute certainty that he'd just painted a target on his own back. But Emma's terrified face was burned into his mind. That drawing of her mother being murdered. The 4 months of silence because speaking wouldn't save her anyway. Marcus had failed to protect his own family. He'd been overseas when they needed him, believing the system would keep them safe. He wouldn't make that mistake again. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You're making a mistake. Walk away while you still can." Marcus deleted it and kept walking. Some mistakes were worth making. The threatening text was still on Marcus's screen when his phone rang. Rachel's number. "They're coming," she said without preamble. "Clayton filed an emergency custody order. Claims Dorothy and Henry kidnapped Emma. Judge signed it an hour ago. He has a court order and he's bringing the sheriff." Marcus was already moving toward his truck. "How long?" "Chen just called me. They left the courthouse 20 minutes ago." "Marcus, it's legal. The order gives him immediate custody pending a full hearing. If you interfere..." "Tell Chen to get to my cabin, now, and bring a camera." He hung up and drove faster than the mountain road wanted him to, his mind running through scenarios. Clayton wasn't just coming for Emma. He was coming to end this. Clean, legal, irreversible. By the time anyone questioned the order, Emma would be gone, and the old couple would be facing kidnapping charges. Marcus called Dorothy. "Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me or Deputy Chen. I'm 10 minutes out." "Marcus, what's happening?" "Everything. Just keep Emma safe." He disconnected and pushed the truck harder. The engine complained but obeyed. 8 minutes later, he skidded to a stop in front of his cabin. Dorothy's face appeared in the window, pale and frightened. Marcus was halfway to the door when he heard the vehicles coming up the road behind him. Multiple engines. He turned. 3 cars. A sheriff's SUV in front. Behind it, a sleek black sedan, and bringing up the rear, the same black SUV from the park. Marcus planted himself in front of his cabin door and waited. The sheriff got out first. Tom Brennan, early 50s, career law enforcement with a gut that spoke of too many years riding a desk. He looked uncomfortable, which told Marcus everything he needed to know about who'd pushed this order through. From the sedan emerged a man Marcus recognized from his research. Clayton Merrick in person was exactly what his photos suggested. Tall, fit, mid-40s with silver threading through dark hair, expensive coat, expensive shoes, expensive smile that didn't reach his eyes. He moved with the confidence of someone who'd never heard the word no and meant it. Behind him came another man, older, carrying a leather briefcase. Victor Kane, Marcus guessed, the lawyer. "Mr. Webb." Sheriff Brennan's voice carried warning and weariness in equal measure. "We have a court order for the return of Emma Merrick to her father's custody. I need you to step aside." "Let me see the order." Brennan handed it over. Marcus read it carefully, buying time. Emergency custody to Clayton Merrick. Allegations of parental kidnapping by Dorothy and Henry Sullivan. Immediate transfer of the minor child. Signed by Judge Morrison. Morrison, Marcus said. Isn't he the same judge who handled Sarah Merrick's protective order? That's not relevant, Kane started. The one who sealed all of Sarah's abuse documentation after she died? Marcus continued. The one whose campaign fund received a $50,000 donation from Merrick Development last year? Clayton's smile finally flickered. Careful, Mr. Webb. Slander is actionable. It's only slander if it's false. Marcus looked at Brennan. Sheriff, did you investigate the kidnapping allegation before serving this order? The order is valid. Did you interview Dorothy and Henry Sullivan? Did you ask why they left? Did you look into the threats they've been receiving? Brennan's face reddened. I don't have to explain my process to you. You do if you're removing a traumatized child from her legal guardians and handing her to a man under investigation for witness intimidation. What investigation? Kane's voice sharpened. There is no investigation. There will be. Deputy Chen's patrol car pulled up, followed by Rachel Torres in her battered sedan. Chen got out with his camera visible on his belt. Sheriff Brennan, I filed a report 2 hours ago documenting threats against witnesses in the Sarah Merrick case. That makes this a conflict of interest. Brennan's jaw worked. Deputy Chen, you're out of line. I'm documenting a custody transfer involving a minor who witnessed potential criminal activity. That's my job, sir. Clayton stepped forward. Enough of this circus. I have a legal order. My daughter is inside that cabin. Sheriff, do your job, or I'll have your badge. Try it, Marcus said quietly. Give the order to breach my property. Let's see how that plays in the media. Former SEAL protecting traumatized child from abusive father. Corrupt sheriff forcing entry on questionable court order. Make my day, Merrick. Clayton's eyes went cold. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, I do. I've dealt with men like you in 12 different countries. The only difference is you wear a suit instead of fatigues. But bullies are bullies wherever you find them. The cabin door opened. Dorothy stood there, Emma pressed against her side. The little girl's face was white with terror, her whole body trembling. Ranger stood in front of them both, not growling, but his message was clear. Clayton's expression changed when he saw Emma. Something that might have been genuine emotion crossed his face. Emma, sweetheart, it's Daddy. I'm here to take you home. Emma made a sound like a wounded animal. Her hands flew to her ears. That's not the reaction of a child who wants to see her father, Rachel said, her phone out and recording. For the record, Emma Merrick is displaying extreme fear response at the sight of Clayton Merrick. She's been poisoned against me, Clayton snapped. These people have filled her head with lies about her own father. Or, Chen said, she remembers what really happened to her mother. Everything stopped. The mountain seemed to hold its breath. Clayton turned slowly. What did you say? Emma has provided testimony indicating Sarah Merrick's death was not an accident. She's identified the vehicle that forced her mother's car off the bridge. Interestingly, it matches the description of vehicles registered to your private security company. Kane moved forward. This is outrageous. You're basing accusations on the traumatized imaginings of a 6-year-old child. I'm basing it on physical evidence, Chen interrupted. The mechanic who pulled the car from the river documented cut brake lines. His report was suppressed, but I've obtained a copy. I've also obtained Dr. Patricia Moore's original assessment before it was altered. Would you like me to continue? Brennan looked between Chen and Clayton. Is this true? Of course not, Clayton said smoothly.
but sweat had appeared on his forehead despite the cold. This is a desperate attempt to interfere with a lawful custody order. Sheriff, I expect you to execute that order. Now.
Marcus saw the calculation in Brennan's eyes. The sheriff was caught between a court order and rapidly accumulating evidence that executing it would make him complicit in something criminal. "Sheriff," Marcus said quietly, "you have a choice right now. You can force this, take Emma and hand her over. But Deputy Chen is recording. Ms. Torres is recording, and I guarantee you, by tomorrow morning, every news outlet in the state will have footage of you ripping a terrified child from her grandparents' arms and giving her to a man under investigation for her mother's murder. Is that really how you want to end your career?" Brennan's hand went to his radio, hesitated. "I need to call this in. Get clarification from the judge." "There's nothing to clarify." Clayton's composure was cracking. "The order is clear. Execute it, or I'll have your job, your pension, and anything else I can take." "Are you threatening a law enforcement officer?" Chen asked mildly. "Because I'm still recording." Clayton's face went dark red. He turned to the men who'd arrived in the black SUV. Two of them, both with the build and bearing of private security. "Retrieve my daughter." The men moved toward the cabin. Marcus stepped into their path. "Don't," he said. The first man reached for Marcus's shoulder. Marcus moved, smooth, practiced, economical. 3 seconds later, the man was face down in the snow with his arm twisted behind his back in a joint lock that would break if he struggled. The second man reached for his belt. Chen's service weapon cleared leather. "Hands where I can see them," Chen ordered. "Do it now." Everything froze. Then Henry appeared in the doorway. His face was gray, his breathing labored. "Dorothy," he said, his voice strange. "Dorothy, I can't." He collapsed. Dorothy screamed. Emma's silence shattered into a wail that cut through the frozen air. Ranger barked, sharp and urgent. Marcus released the security guard and ran to Henry. The old man was clutching his chest, his lips blue, his eyes rolling back. "Heart attack," Marcus said. "Rachel, call 911, now." Rachel was already dialing. Clayton stood motionless, watching. His face had gone blank, calculating. Marcus started CPR, his hands finding the rhythm he'd been trained on years ago. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Dorothy was sobbing, Emma was screaming, and through it all, Marcus counted and compressed and breathed. "Ambulance is coming," Rachel said. 10 minutes. 10 minutes Henry might not have. "Dorothy," Marcus said between compressions, "get the aspirin from my bathroom cabinet, and get me the AED from the closet under the stairs." She ran. Emma stood frozen in the doorway. Her screams had stopped, but her mouth was open in silent horror. Then she moved, walked straight to her grandfather, knelt down beside him. "Grandpa," she whispered. The first word she'd spoken in 4 months, soft as snow falling. "Grandpa, don't go. Please don't go like Mama." Henry's eyes fluttered, focused on her face. His lips moved, trying to form words. Dorothy returned with the aspirin and the AED. Marcus got the device hooked up, following the automated instructions. "Clear," the machine said. Everyone stepped back. The shock delivered. Henry's body jerked. Nothing. Marcus started compressions again. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on, old Nan. Your granddaughter just spoke for you. You don't get to miss that." Another shock. Another eternity of waiting. Henry gasped. His eyes opened. His hand found Emma's. "There you are," Emma whispered. There you are. The ambulance arrived 7 minutes later, sirens cutting through the mountain quiet. Paramedics took over, efficient and professional. They loaded Henry onto a stretcher, started an IV, attached monitors. "Ma'am, are you family?" one of them asked Dorothy. "His wife." "You can ride with us." Dorothy looked at Emma, torn. Emma's hand was still locked on Henry's. "I'll bring her," Marcus said. "I'll be right behind you, I promise." Dorothy hesitated, then nodded. They loaded Henry into the ambulance. Emma watched them go, her small body shaking. Clayton stepped forward. "This changes nothing. I still have a court order. Emma is coming with me." Emma turned, looked at her father, and spoke in a voice that carried across the frozen yard. "You killed my mama." The words fell like stones into still water. Ripples spread. Everyone stopped moving. "What?" Clayton's face went white. "Emma, no, sweetheart. I saw you." Emma's voice was stronger now, months of silence breaking like a dam. "I saw your car behind us. I saw you push Mama off the bridge. I saw you watching while we went into the water. I saw you drive away." "She's confused," Clayton said desperately. "She's traumatized. She doesn't know what she's saying. I know exactly what I'm saying." Emma's words were clear, precise, devastating. "You told Mama you'd make her sorry. You told her she'd never be safe. You told her you'd take me away and she'd never see me again. And then you killed her." Chen's camera captured every word. Rachel's phone recorded every syllable. And Sheriff Brennan's face went from red to white to something close to green. "Emma," Clayton tried again, his voice breaking. "I loved your mother. I would never—" "You hurt her!" Emma's voice rose. "I saw the bruises. I heard her crying. I heard you say terrible things. And when she left you, you promised you'd destroy her. So you did." "Mr. Merrick," Brennan said slowly, "I think you need to come with me. We have some questions." "I'm not going anywhere without a lawyer." Clayton's smooth facade was gone completely now. "This is a setup. You've coached this child." "Nobody coached me!" Emma's shout echoed. "I remember everything. I remember you following us. I remember your car hitting ours. I remember the water and Mama screaming, and you just watching us die." She was crying now, great heaving sobs, but the words kept coming. 4 months of silence pouring out all at once. "I remember waking up in the hospital, and you were there, and you told me it was an accident, and if I said anything different, bad things would happen to Grandma and Grandpa. I remember you saying I had to be a good girl and keep quiet. I remember being so scared I stopped talking because talking made you hurt people." Marcus moved to her, knelt down, put his arms around her. She collapsed against him, her small body racked with sobs. "You're safe now," Marcus said. "You're safe. He can't hurt you anymore." "Mr. Merrick," Chen's voice was hard, "you need to come with us. Sheriff, I'm formally requesting you take this man into custody for questioning regarding the death of Sarah Merrick and witness intimidation of a minor." Brennan looked sick, but he nodded. "Clayton Merrick, you need to come with me. Touch me and I'll sue everyone in this county for everything they own," Clayton snarled, but his hands were shaking. "I have rights. I have lawyers. You have the right to remain silent," Chen said, "and I strongly suggest you use it." Kane stepped forward. "My client will cooperate fully, but this arrest is unlawful." "Your client just got accused of murder by an eyewitness," Rachel said. "I'd say that's grounds for questioning at minimum." Clayton's eyes swept the scene. Marcus holding Emma, Chen with his camera, Rachel with her phone, Brennan looking like a man who'd just realized he'd been played for a fool. The security guards standing uselessly aside. "This isn't over," Clayton said. "I have resources. I have connections. I will bury all of you." "You're welcome to try," Marcus said. "But you're going to do it from a cell." They put Clayton in the back of Brennan's SUV. Kane followed in the sedan. The security guards left without a word. Chen stayed behind, his face grim. "That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the stupidest," he said to Marcus. "Probably both." Marcus still held Emma. But she needed to say it. Needed to know someone would believe her. "I believe her." Chen looked at Emma. "You were very brave. What you did just now, that took more courage than most adults have." Emma wiped her eyes. "Is Grandpa going to die?" "Not if we can help it. Come on, let's get you to the hospital." They drove in convoy, Chen's patrol car leading, Marcus's truck following. Emma sat in the back seat, Ranger's head in her lap. She was still crying, but quietly now. Spent. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not letting him take me." Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel. "I won't let anyone hurt you. I promise." It was the same promise he'd made to his own daughter once, the one he'd failed to keep. But maybe this time, maybe with this child, he could make it right. They were halfway to the hospital when Rachel called. "Marcus, we have a problem." "What now?" "Judge Morrison just issued a gag order. Says Emma's statement was obtained under duress. Says it's inadmissible." "He can't do that. He just did. And Clayton's already out. Bail posted. He walked out of the station 20 minutes after they brought him in." Marcus felt ice slide down his spine. "Where is he now?" "Unknown. His lawyer says he's at a secure location. But Marcus, Morrison also ruled the custody order stands. Says the allegations need to be investigated separately from the custody question. Says Emma needs to be in a stable environment pending resolution." "She is in a stable environment, with her grandparents." "Morrison doesn't see it that way. He's appointed a temporary guardian. State Social Services is supposed to pick her up tomorrow morning." "And let me guess, Clayton has friends in social services." Rachel's silence was answer enough. Marcus looked in the rearview mirror at Emma. She'd fallen asleep, finally, exhausted by trauma and truth-telling. Ranger watched over her like a sentinel. "We need more evidence," Marcus said. "Something Morrison can't suppress. Something that ties Clayton directly to Sarah's murder." "Like what?" "Like the security footage from the bridge. Like testimony from Clayton's security team. Like financial records showing payments to mechanics and therapists and judges." "That could take months to obtain legally." "Then we don't do it legally." Marcus's voice went cold. "We find someone who knows where the bodies are buried. And we make them talk." "Marcus." "I'm not letting her go into the system, Rachel. I've seen what happens to kids who witness against powerful people. They disappear into foster care. They have accidents. They recant their stories. And the men who hurt them walk free." "If you do something illegal, you'll lose all credibility." Everything Emma said today could be thrown out. Only if I get caught. He hung up before Rachel could argue further. They reached the hospital. Henry was already in surgery. Blocked artery, the doctor said. They caught it in time, but the next 24 hours were critical. Dorothy sat in the waiting room, looking small and lost and ancient. Emma ran to her. They held each other without speaking. Marcus pulled Chen aside. "I need you to put protection on Henry's room, and on Dorothy and Emma." "You think Clayton would—" "I think Clayton just had his carefully constructed life exposed by a 6-year-old. I think he's desperate.
and desperate men do desperate things. Chen nodded slowly. I'll see what I can do. But Marcus, there are limits to what I can arrange without official approval. And after what happened today, my boss is already asking questions about my involvement. Then we work outside official channels. That's a good way to end up arrested.
Or it's the only way to keep Emma alive. Marcus met his eyes. You were first responder at Sarah's accident. You pulled Emma from that car. You saw her face. You knew something was wrong. Tell me I'm wrong to fight for her. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. You're not wrong, but you're also not bulletproof. Clayton has already proven he can get to people. Judges, lawyers, cops. What makes you think you're safe? I don't think I'm safe. I just think I'm necessary. He left Chen in the waiting room and walked outside. The night was clear and cold and full of stars that didn't care about human suffering. Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call to a number he'd sworn he'd never use again. It rang 3 times. Then a familiar voice answered. Webb, didn't expect to hear from you again. I need a favor, Torres. What kind of favor? The illegal kind. There was a pause, then, I'm listening. Marcus laid out what he needed. Financial records, phone logs, security footage, all the things that would normally require warrants and cooperation and months of legal wrangling. That's a tall order, Torres said, and more than a little felony adjacent. Name your price. It's not about money. It's about why. Why risk everything for a kid you just met? Marcus thought about that. About his daughter who died while he was fighting someone else's war. About his wife who'd called for help and been told to wait for the police who arrived too late. About all the times the system had failed because good people decided their careers mattered more than doing what was right. Because someone has to, he said finally. Torres was quiet. Then, give me 48 hours. And Webb? After this, we're even. No more favors. Fair enough. Marcus hung up and stood in the cold, watching his breath fog in the air. Somewhere in the night, Clayton Merrick was planning his next move. Somewhere, judges and lawyers were being called, strings were being pulled, pressure was being applied. But for the first time in 3 years, Marcus felt something he'd thought was dead. Purpose, direction, a reason to fight. Emma had spoken. The truth was out. Now he just had to keep her alive long enough for that truth to matter. He went back inside. The waiting room was quieter now. Dorothy had dozed off, with Emma curled against her. Ranger lay at their feet. Chen sat nearby, alert and watchful. Marcus took a chair across from them and waited. It was going to be a long night. And somewhere in his gut, he knew it was only the beginning. Henry survived the surgery, barely. The surgeon came out at 4 a.m. looking exhausted and said the words that mattered most. He's stable. Critical, but stable. Dorothy collapsed in her chair, crying so hard her whole body shook. Emma wrapped her arms around her grandmother and held on like she'd never let go. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest that he hadn't known was strangling him. Can we see him? Dorothy asked. I see you. Family only. 2 at a time. Dorothy looked at Marcus. Will you stay with Emma? I'm not going anywhere. They went in together, Dorothy leaning heavily on a nurse's arm. Emma stayed with Marcus and Ranger in the waiting room, curled up in a chair that swallowed her small frame. She hadn't spoken again since her explosion of truth in the cabin yard. Marcus wasn't sure if the silence was exhaustion or fear returning. Chen had left an hour ago, promising to return with the day shift. Rachel had gone home to file emergency motions. The hospital was quiet,
with that eerie pre-dawn stillness where everything felt suspended between night and morning. Marcus's phone buzzed. Torres. "Got something," the voice said without preamble.
Financial records show Clayton made 5 payments of $10,000 each to Judge Morrison's campaign fund over the last 2 years. All perfectly legal donations, except they line up exactly with court dates involving Clayton's cases.
"That's not enough," Marcus said. "Rich guys donate to judges all the time." "I'm not finished. Morrison's son got arrested for DUI 6 months ago. Should have lost his license, maybe faced jail time. Case disappeared. Prosecutor who dropped it works for a firm that gets 70% of its business from Merrick Development." Marcus felt pieces clicking together. "Keep going." Phone records show Clayton called the mechanic who pulled Sarah's car 3 times in the week after the accident. Each call lasted less than 2 minutes. The mechanic's business suddenly got cited for violations the day after he talked to Dorothy and Henry. Guess who owns the building inspection company? Let me guess. Shell Corporation traced back to one of Clayton's holding companies. Same pattern with Dr. Moore. Her clinic's lease is owned by another Merrick Shell. Rent doubled 2 days after she quit and moved counties. "He's been systematically silencing anyone who could expose him," Marcus said. "That's not even the best part." Torres's voice took on an edge. "I found security footage from a gas station half a mile from Harper's Bridge, time-stamped the morning of Sarah's accident. Black SUV registered to Merrick Security filled up at 6:43 a.m. Sarah went off the bridge at 7:15. SUV came back through at 7:35. Driver paid cash both times, but the camera caught his face." "Can you ID him?" "Already did. Marcus Webb, meet Thomas Garrett. Former cop, fired 5 years ago for excessive force. Currently employed as head of security for Merrick Development."
And here's where it gets interesting. Garrett was the responding officer to 2 of Sarah's domestic violence calls, the ones that went nowhere. Marcus's blood went cold. "He's been Clayton's fixer from the beginning." "Looks that way. And I found one more thing. Hospital records from the day Emma was pulled from the car. She had bruises on her upper arms, finger-shaped. The paramedic noted it, but the doctor who examined her marked them as consistent with car seat restraints during impact." Let me guess who that doctor was. Dr. Richard Voss sits on the board of 2 charities funded by Merrick Development. His daughter got a full-ride scholarship to medical school last year. Scholarship program administered by Clayton Merrick personally. "How fast can you get all this to the state attorney general?" Torres hesitated. "Most of it was obtained through methods that wouldn't hold up in court. I'd need warrants, proper channels. How fast can you get it to the media?" Silence. Then, "You want to go nuclear?" "I want Emma safe. If the courts won't protect her, public pressure will. This will burn bridges, Webb. Once this hits the news, everyone involved will lawyer up. Could make a criminal prosecution harder. Or it could make it impossible to sweep under the rug." Marcus looked at Emma, sleeping now with her hand resting on Ranger's head. "Send it. All of it. Every news outlet you can find." "Your funeral." But Torres didn't sound disapproving. "Give me 2 hours." Marcus hung up as Dorothy emerged from the ICU, her face blotchy from crying, but lighter somehow. "He's awake," she said. "Weak, but he's talking. He asked for Emma." Emma's eyes opened immediately. "Can I see him?" The nurse said just for a minute. They went together, Dorothy holding Emma's hand. Marcus stayed behind with Ranger and tried not to think about all the ways this could still go wrong. His phone rang again. Rachel, breathless. "Turn on the news, Channel 7, now!" Marcus found a television in the waiting area. The morning news was just starting. The anchor looked excited. The kind of excitement that came from breaking a big story. Developing this morning, disturbing allegations against prominent local developer Clayton Merrick. Documents obtained by this station suggest a pattern of witness intimidation, possible judicial corruption, and new questions about the death of Sarah Merrick 6 months ago. They showed photos. Sarah's car being pulled from the river, Clayton at charity events, Judge Morrison at a fundraiser, the mechanic's shop, Dr. Moore's former clinic. Sources close to the investigation say Merrick's 6-year-old daughter provided eyewitness testimony yesterday, claiming she saw her father's vehicle force her mother's car off Harper's Bridge. While that testimony has been sealed by court order, multiple sources confirm financial connections between Merrick and several key figures who closed the original investigation. Marcus felt a grim satisfaction. Torres worked fast. The state attorney general's office has confirmed they're reviewing the case. Local law enforcement had no comment, but sources say a grand jury may be convened as early as next week. The story ran for 8 minutes. By the time it finished, Marcus's phone was ringing non-stop. Rachel, Chen, numbers he didn't recognize. He ignored them all, except one. "You're watching?" Torres asked. "Yeah." "Every major outlet in the state is running it. AP picked it up. CNN called for an interview." "What about Clayton?" "No comment from him or his lawyer. But Webb? His house is surrounded by news vans. He can't take a step without cameras following. And Morrison just announced he's recusing himself from all Merrick-related cases. Claims health reasons." "Health reasons," Marcus repeated. "Right." "It's working. Public pressure is mounting. 3 of Clayton's board members resigned this morning. His biggest investors are demanding answers. And the Attorney General just announced a press conference for noon." Marcus checked the time. 7:30 in the morning. In 12 hours, Torres had done what the legal system had failed to do for months. Made it impossible for Clayton to hide. "Thank you," Marcus said. "Don't thank me yet. This could still fall apart. But at least now, people are watching." Emma and Dorothy came back. Emma's eyes were red, but she was smiling slightly. "Grandpa said you saved his life," she told Marcus. "Your words saved his life," Marcus corrected. "He heard you speak. That's what brought him back." "He said," Emma's voice caught, "he said Mama would be proud of me." Dorothy pulled her close. "Your Mama would be so proud. You were braver than anyone should have to be." Chen arrived with coffee and news. "State police are taking over the investigation. They want to interview Emma again, with proper protocols this time." Child psychologist present, recording equipment, the whole thing. "When?" Marcus asked. "This afternoon." "And Marcus, they want to talk to you too, about how you obtained some of this information." "I didn't obtain anything. I just asked questions." "Right." Chen's expression said he knew better, but wasn't going to push. "Either way, this is bigger than county jurisdiction now. Clayton's going to face real scrutiny." The day blurred into a series of moments. Lawyers arriving, child services showing up but backing off when they saw the news coverage, the hospital moving Henry to a private room with security posted outside, Rachel filing new motions based on the breaking evidence, and through it all, Emma stayed close to Marcus and Ranger, speaking in whispers when she spoke at all, as if afraid her voice might disappear again if she used it too much. At noon, the Attorney General held her press conference. "We have opened a formal investigation into the death of Sarah Merrick and related allegations of witness intimidation and judicial impropriety. A grand jury will convene Monday morning. We are treating this with the utmost seriousness." She didn't mention Clayton by name. She didn't have to. Every news outlet did it for her. By 2 o'clock, Clayton's lawyer issued a statement claiming his client was the victim of a smear campaign orchestrated by vindictive in-laws trying to keep his daughter from him. By 3 o'clock, Thomas Garrett, head of Merrick Security, was arrested trying to board a flight to Mexico. Chen called with that news. He lawyered up immediately, but Webb, they found evidence in his vehicle. Detailed logs of surveillance on Dorothy and Henry, photos of your cabin, and a burner phone with calls to Clayton's private number the day before Henry's heart attack. That's conspiracy, Marcus said. At minimum. The DA's already talking about charges related to Sarah's death. If they can prove Garrett was acting on Clayton's orders, they can, Marcus interrupted. They will. Because men like Garrett don't risk murder charges for anyone unless they're getting paid very well or protected very thoroughly. And now that he's facing serious time, his loyalty is going to evaporate. He was right. By evening, news broke that Garrett was negotiating a plea deal. In exchange for reduced charges, he'd provide testimony about his role in Sarah's death and the subsequent cover-up. Rachel called, crying. He's going to talk. Marcus, he's going to tell them everything. Who ordered what? Who got paid? Who knew? All of it. What about Emma's custody? Morrison's recusal means the case goes to Judge Hartley. I know her. She's fair. Doesn't take donations from anyone. I filed an emergency motion to dissolve the custody order and confirm Dorothy and Henry as permanent guardians. Hearing is scheduled for Friday. That's 3 days away. Can Emma stay with them until then? Technically, she's supposed to go into state care, but with Henry in the hospital and the media circus, Child Services agreed to a temporary variance. Emma can stay with Dorothy under supervision until the hearing. Supervision meaning daily check-ins. And Marcus, they suggested it would look better if Emma wasn't staying at a single man's isolated cabin. No offense. None taken. Marcus looked at Dorothy, who'd been listening. There's a hotel in town. I'll get you a room. Security, whatever you need. Dorothy shook her head. We can't afford. I can. It's done. He made the arrangements. 2 connecting rooms at the town's best hotel. Security guard in the hallway, courtesy of Chen pulling strings. Meals delivered. Everything Emma and Dorothy might need. That night, as he was getting them settled, Emma pulled on his sleeve. Are you leaving? She asked, fear creeping into her voice. Just going back to my cabin. I'll visit tomorrow. But what if the bad man comes? Marcus knelt down. The bad man is being watched by a lot of people now. Police, reporters, people who won't let him hurt anyone else. And you have security right outside your door. And Ranger. He looked at the dog. Ranger can stay with you tonight if you want. Ranger's tail wagged once. He moved to Emma's side and sat. Emma's arms went around the dog's neck. Will you come back? Every day until you're safe. I promise. He left them there, Dorothy already tucking Emma into bed, Ranger standing guard. Drove back up the mountain to his empty cabin and sat in the dark for a long time. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Marcus Webb? A woman's voice, older, cautious. Who's asking? My name is Patricia Moore. I was Emma's therapist. I heard what happened, what Emma said, and Her voice broke. I need to tell someone what I did. What they made me do. Marcus grabbed a pen. I'm listening. She talked for 40 minutes. Every detail of how she'd been pressured to change her assessment, the threats to her job, the implications about her student loans, the supervisor who'd made it clear her career was over if she didn't comply. I've been carrying this guilt for months, she said. When I saw the news today, saw that little girl finally being believed, I knew I had to speak up. I don't care about my job anymore. I just want to do the right thing. Will you testify to this, officially? Yes, to anyone who will listen. I'll tell them what Clayton Merrick's people did, how they corrupted my assessment, how they made me betray a traumatized child for the sake of covering up murder. Marcus gave her Rachel's number, told her to call first thing in the morning. When he hung up, he realized his hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something else, something that felt like hope. His phone rang again. Chen. Just got word. Grand jury is being expedited. They'll hear evidence starting tomorrow instead of Monday. AG wants to move fast before Clayton can flee. Can he flee? Isn't he being monitored? He surrendered his passport this afternoon, but men with his resources can always run. That's why they're pushing this through. What are his chances? Chen was quiet for a moment. With Garrett's testimony? With Emma's eyewitness account? With all the financial connections Torres uncovered? I'd say he's looking at indictment on multiple felonies. Murder, conspiracy, witness tampering, judicial corruption. If even half of it sticks, he'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Good, Marcus said simply. He slept that night for the first time in weeks without nightmares. Woke to find Ranger had returned home sometime in the early hours. Mission complete. The dog looked satisfied in the way dogs do when they know they've done good work. Friday came. The custody hearing was at 10 o'clock. Marcus arrived early, found Rachel pacing outside the courtroom. Judge Hartley reviewed everything, she said. All the new evidence, Dr. Moore's testimony, the financial records, Emma's statement. She wants to interview Emma privately. Is that normal? For a case like this, yes. She needs to assess Emma's well-being and hear directly from her. Emma arrived with Dorothy, both dressed carefully. Emma wore a blue dress that had been Sarah's when she was young. She held Dorothy's hand tight. Judge Hartley was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She spoke to Emma gently but directly. I know you've been through a lot. I'm not going to make you repeat everything. But I need to ask you one question. Where do you want to live? Emma didn't hesitate. With Grandma and Grandpa. They love me. They keep me safe. They believe me. What about your father? Emma's face went pale, but she met the judge's eyes. He's not safe. He hurt my mama. He scared me. I don't want to see him ever again. Judge Hartley nodded. Thank you for being honest. She looked at Dorothy. Mrs. Sullivan, I understand you've been diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's. How are you managing that? Dorothy stood straighter. I'm on medication. I have support from my doctor and my husband. Most days I'm fine. The days I'm not, Henry is there. And we have friends now who help. Good people who care about Emma. The concern is stability. Long-term care for a child requires— Your Honor, Rachel interrupted. May I speak? Hartley nodded. Dorothy and Henry Sullivan have raised their daughter successfully. They've protected their granddaughter at great personal risk. They've fought a system designed to silence them, and they've done it all while managing health challenges that would have broken lesser people. Yes, Dorothy has Alzheimer's. Yes, Henry has heart disease. But they have resources now, community support, medical care, and most importantly, they have love, which is more than Emma ever got from her biological father. Judge Hartley was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. Based on the evidence presented, including new information about Mr. Merrick's potential involvement in serious criminal activity, I am dissolving the emergency custody order. Full legal guardianship is hereby granted to Dorothy and Henry Sullivan, with provisions for regular medical and psychological check-ins for Emma. Mr. Merrick's parental rights are suspended, pending the outcome of the criminal investigation.
and I am ordering a full review of Judge Morrison's handling of this case and all related matters." She brought down the gavel. "We're adjourned." Dorothy collapsed into a chair, crying. Emma climbed into her lap and held on. Rachel wiped her eyes. Chen, sitting in the back, allowed himself a small smile. Marcus felt something unlock in his chest. It wasn't quite peace, but it was close. Outside the courthouse, news crews waited. Rachel handled them with professional courtesy, confirming the custody decision, refusing to comment on the criminal investigation. Emma saw the cameras and moved closer to Marcus. "Will they want to talk to me?" "Not if you don't want to. You've said enough. You've been brave enough. Now you get to just be a kid again." She looked up at him. "Will you still visit, now that it's over?" "It's not over," Marcus said. "Not quite. But yes, I'll visit, as long as you want me to." "Forever?" He smiled. "We'll start with tomorrow and see where it goes." That afternoon, the grand jury handed down indictments. Clayton Merrick was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, witness tampering, obstruction of justice, and corruption of public officials. Bail was set at $5 million. He couldn't make it. His assets were frozen pending investigation. His investors had abandoned him. His political friends had disappeared. Clayton Merrick spent that night in county jail, and for the first time in 6 months, Emma slept without nightmares. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Marcus attended every day, sitting in the back row where Emma couldn't see him but could feel him there. She testified on day 4, her voice small but steady, telling the jury exactly what she'd seen the morning her mother died. Clayton's lawyers tried everything, called her confused, called her coached, called her a traumatized child whose memories couldn't be trusted. But when they showed her the photograph of the black SUV, Emma's reaction was instant and undeniable. She screamed, tried to run, had to be carried from the courtroom by Dorothy while she sobbed against her grandmother's shoulder. The jury saw it. 12 faces going from skeptical to horrified in the span of 30 seconds. Thomas Garrett testified on day 9, gave them everything. How Clayton had paid him to follow Sarah, how he'd cut her brake lines the night before, knowing exactly which route she drove to Emma's school, how he'd tailed her that morning to make sure the job got done, how he'd pushed her car when the brakes failed, but Sarah tried to stop anyway, how he'd watched the car go through the guardrail and into the water. "Did you try to help?" the prosecutor asked. Garrett's face was stone. "No. Mr. Merrick said to make sure she didn't survive. I waited until the car was fully submerged. Then I left." "And the child, Emma?" "I didn't know she was in the car. Not until I saw it on the news later." Mr. Merrick was furious. Said I should have checked. "But the girl was too young to be a reliable witness, so we just had to make sure she stayed quiet." "How did you do that?" Garrett laid it out. The surveillance, the intimidation, the threats to Dorothy and Henry, the systematic silencing of anyone who questioned the official story. Clayton sat through it all with his face blank, but Marcus watched his hands. They never stopped shaking. The verdict came on a Friday afternoon, 3 weeks and 2 days after the trial began. Guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, conspiracy, witness tampering, corruption. Clayton's face went white. His lawyers started talking about appeals. The judge silenced him and set sentencing for 2 weeks out. Dorothy cried. Rachel hugged her. Chen shook Marcus's hand without speaking, his eyes saying everything that mattered. Emma, who'd been waiting outside the courtroom with a victim's advocate, asked only one question when Dorothy told her, "Does this mean he can't hurt anyone else?" "Not ever again, sweetheart. Not ever again." Emma nodded once. Then she asked if they could get ice cream. Because she was 7 years old, and justice was important, but ice cream was immediate. And that's how children healed. One small, normal moment at a time. Sentencing came on a cold morning in late March. The judge gave Clayton life without parole on the murder charge, plus additional years for the other counts. He'd die in prison. That was the reality, and everyone knew it. Clayton's last words before they led him away were directed at Marcus. "You should have minded your own business." Marcus met his eyes. "She was my business, the moment you made her afraid." That night, Marcus drove to the hospital where Henry was finishing cardiac rehab. The old man had recovered slowly but steadily, taking his medications, following doctor's orders, living carefully, because he had something to live for. "It's over," Marcus told him.
Clayton's done. Emma's safe. Henry's hand shook as he gripped Marcus's. "Thank you for everything you risked, everything you did." "I didn't do it alone." "No, but you started it. You opened your door when everyone else had closed theirs. That matters." Marcus thought about that later, driving back up the mountain to his cabin. How many doors had he closed after his wife and daughter died? How many people had he shut out in the name of protecting himself from more pain? Emma had knocked on his door in a blizzard. And somehow, impossibly, she'd opened something in him that he'd thought was locked forever. Spring came slowly to the mountain. Snow melted into mud, mud into grass, grass into wildflowers. Marcus watched the world wake up and felt something similar happening inside himself. He started making changes, small ones at first. Fixed up the spare room properly, added another bed, put in a phone line for emergencies. Rachel noticed first. "You're turning your cabin into something," she said one afternoon when she stopped by with paperwork for Dorothy and Henry's formal adoption proceedings. "A safe house?" "Maybe. I don't know yet." "You know there's a need. 3 women last month tried to leave abusive partners. 2 had nowhere to go. Shelters are full. Family members are scared. They need places like this, remote, defendable, run by someone who won't be intimidated." Marcus looked at her. "You've been thinking about this." "I think about it every time a client calls me crying because they're going back to their abuser. Not because they want to, because they have nowhere else to go." Rachel's voice was careful, feeling out the territory. "If someone were to open a place like that, I'd send people there. So would Chen. So would the domestic violence advocates I work with." "It's a lot of liability." "It's also a lot of lives saved." He thought about that for days, talked to Dorothy about it. "You'd be good at it," she said. They were sitting in the small house the Sullivans had rented in town, close enough to Henry's doctor's and Emma's school. Emma was doing homework at the kitchen table, Ranger lying at her feet. "You understand what it's like to have the system fail you. You understand what it takes to fight back." "I'm not a counselor, not a social worker." "No, but you're someone who'll open the door in a blizzard. That's what people need most." Emma looked up from her math problems. "Are you going to help other people like you helped us?" Marcus met her eyes. "Maybe. Would that be okay with you?" She considered it seriously. "Will you still visit me?" "Every week, I promise." "Then it's okay. Other kids should have someone like you too." That decided it. Marcus made calls, talked to organizations, filed paperwork. By late April, his cabin was registered as an emergency shelter for domestic violence survivors. He trained with advocates, learned protocols, set up safety measures. The first family arrived on a rainy night in May. A woman in her 30s with 2 children under 5, running from a husband who'd put her in the hospital twice. She stood on Marcus's porch, looking terrified and defiant in equal measure. "You're Marcus Webb?" Yeah?
The advocate said you'd have room, that you'd understand, that you wouldn't judge.
Come inside. You're safe here. She stayed 4 days, left with a referral to legal aid, a safety plan, and contact information for long-term housing. Called Marcus a week later to say her husband had been arrested for violating a protective order, that she and her kids were staying with her sister, that she was filing for divorce.
Thank you,
She said.
for not turning us away.
I wouldn't do that.
A lot of people do, when they find out how bad it is, how dangerous he is. They get scared. But you didn't.
Marcus thought about that after she hung up, about fear and courage. About how courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. More families came. Some stayed a night. Some stayed a week. All of them left safer than when they arrived. Marcus learned to cook simple meals in bulk, learned to comfort crying children, learned to sit quietly with traumatized women who needed someone to believe them without demanding their whole story. Ranger became an unofficial therapy dog. The children loved him. The adults found comfort in his steady presence. Marcus started training him properly for the role, brought in a second rescue dog to help with the work. Summer arrived. Emma finished 1st grade. Her teacher told Dorothy she was thriving, making friends, speaking up in class, laughing at recess.
She still has nightmares sometimes,
Dorothy confessed to Marcus during one of his weekly visits.
but less. And when she wakes up, she talks about them now instead of just crying. She's healing.
So are you, Marcus observed. Dorothy's Alzheimer's was being managed with medication and cognitive therapy. She had bad days, but they were fewer than the good ones.
Henry says we're all healing.
Dorothy smiled.
He says God brought us to your cabin for a reason, that we all needed each other.
Marcus wasn't sure about God's involvement, but he couldn't argue with the outcome. The Sullivans had become family in a way he'd never expected. Emma called him Uncle Marcus, brought him drawings from school, asked his opinion on important matters like whether pink or purple was the better color for her new backpack. He'd lost a daughter. He couldn't replace her, wouldn't try. But Emma had reminded him what it felt like to be needed, to matter, to have a reason to wake up each morning beyond just surviving another day. In late July, Rachel called with news.
Remember Dr. Moore, the therapist who was pressured to change Emma's assessment?
Yeah, she's starting a practice specifically for trauma victims, specializing in cases where the legal system has failed them. She asked if we'd partner with her, said she wants to do the work she should have done from the beginning.
Tell her yes.
Also, Chen got promoted. Detective now. First case he's been assigned? Reviewing closed domestic violence cases for potential criminal charges. He's going after every one that smells like the investigation was buried. Marcus smiled. Good for him. He wants to use your shelter as a resource, somewhere to send victims while investigations proceed. Says having a safe location makes people more willing to testify.
He knows where to find me.
By August, Marcus's cabin was operating at near capacity most weeks. He hired help, a retired nurse, a woman who'd survived her own abuse and wanted to help others escape. Set up a fund for expenses, found donors who believed in the work. The local paper did a story. Then, a regional news station. Suddenly, people were calling from 3 counties away, asking if Marcus had room, if he could help. He said yes every time he could. Turned no one away unless there was genuinely no space. And when there was no space, he found alternatives, other shelters, other advocates, other safe places. Emma's 7th birthday fell on a Saturday in September. The Sullivans threw a party at the community center. Invited everyone who'd been part of the journey. Rachel, Chen, Dr. Moore, the nurses from the hospital, even Torres who dug up the evidence that broke the case open. Marcus arrived with Ranger and a present he'd spent weeks choosing, a leather-bound journal with Emma's name embossed on the cover. "For your thoughts," he told her. "For writing or drawing or whatever you need. Your mama kept journals. Dorothy has them saved for when you're older. I thought maybe you'd want to start your own." Emma hugged him so hard she nearly knocked him over.
Thank you, Uncle Marcus.
"I'm going to write about all the good things now, so when I'm old like Grandma, I can remember the happy times."
That's perfect, sweetheart.
The party was loud and joyful, and full of people who'd learned to love Emma through fighting for her. There was cake and singing and presents. Emma blew out 7 candles and made a wish she wouldn't tell anyone. But later, when the party was winding down, she pulled Marcus aside.
"I wished that nobody would have to be as scared as I was," she whispered.
"Is that a good wish?" Marcus's throat tightened. "That's the best wish I've ever heard."
"Are you helping make it come true? With the families at your cabin?"
"I'm trying."
"Then maybe my wish will work."
She smiled up at him with such trust, such hope, that Marcus had to look away before she saw the tears in his eyes. Driving home that night, Ranger sleeping in the passenger seat, Marcus thought about wishes and promises and second chances. About how grief could turn into purpose if you let it. About how the worst night of his life, opening his door to find 3 freezing strangers, had somehow led to the best thing he'd done since becoming a SEAL. He'd spent 3 years believing he had nothing left to give, that staying isolated kept him safe from more pain. But Emma had taught him something different. Pain was inevitable. Loss was guaranteed. But so was the possibility of healing if you opened yourself to it. The cabin appeared in his headlights. Home. Not just for him anymore, but for anyone who needed shelter from their own storms. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost let it go to voicemail, then answered.
"Is this Marcus Webb?"
A woman's voice, shaking, desperate. "Yeah?"
"My name is Jennifer. I got your number from an advocate. She said you might have space. I have 2 kids. We left tonight. My husband found out we were planning to run and he..."
Her voice broke.
"We're at a gas station off Route 7.
It's cold, and I don't know where to go, and I'm so scared." Marcus was already turning his truck around. "Stay where you are. Keep the doors locked. I'm 20 minutes out. You're going to be okay."
"You're sure? You have room?"
"I have room. And Jennifer, you did the hardest part already. You left. Everything else we'll figure out together." She was crying when he found her, 2 small boys sleeping in the back seat of an old sedan that was running on fumes and hope. Marcus paid for gas, bought food, led them back to his cabin through roads he could drive blind. The boys woke up confused, but calmed when they saw Ranger. Jennifer looked around the cabin with wide eyes.
"This is really okay? We can stay?"
"As long as you need. There's a room upstairs, clean sheets, food in the kitchen. And in the morning, we'll talk about next steps. But tonight, you just rest." She started crying again.
"I don't know how to thank you."
"You don't have to. Just focus on keeping yourself and your boys safe." He got them settled, showed them where everything was, gave them space. Later, as he sat downstairs listening to Jennifer read her children a bedtime story in soft, exhausted tones, Marcus felt that familiar tightening in his chest that wasn't pain anymore. It was purpose, direction, the knowledge that his life meant something beyond his own survival. His phone lit up with a text from Emma, a photo of her with her new journal, already filled with her careful 7-year-old handwriting. The message read,
"Writing about my birthday, about you and Ranger, and how sometimes the best families are the ones you choose.
Marcus saved the photo, sent back a heart emoji, which was as sentimental as he ever got. Then he walked to the window and looked out at the night. Winter would come again. More storms. More desperate people seeking shelter. More broken families trying to heal. But his door would be open. His light would be on, and anyone who needed safety would find it. Because 3 years ago, a little girl and her grandparents had knocked on his door in a blizzard, and instead of turning them away, instead of choosing isolation over involvement, Marcus had said yes. That single decision had saved Emma's life, had brought a murderer to justice, had given Dorothy and Henry their granddaughter, had given Marcus himself a reason to stop hiding from the world. And now, every time he opened his door to another frightened family, he was honoring that choice, multiplying it, turning one act of compassion into 1,000 small mercies that would ripple out farther than he'd ever know. Upstairs, Jennifer's voice had quieted. The boys were asleep. The cabin was settling into the peaceful silence of people who could finally rest without fear. Marcus locked the doors, checked the windows, made sure everything was secure. Then he sat in his chair by the fire with Ranger at his feet and let himself feel what he'd been fighting for 3 years. Not grief. Not anymore. Something else. Something that felt like healing. His daughter was gone. His wife was gone. That pain would never fully disappear. But in its place had grown something unexpected. A fierce, protective love for everyone who came through his door seeking what he'd once needed and never found. Someone to believe them, someone to protect them, someone to say yes when the world kept saying no. Sometimes God didn't erase the storm, Marcus thought. Sometimes He just gave you the strength to walk through it. And sometimes, if you were lucky, He turned your greatest loss into someone else's greatest hope. Marcus closed his eyes and let the fire warm his face. Outside, the mountain breathed its ancient rhythm. Inside, 3 people slept safely for the first time in months. And somewhere in town, Emma Sullivan was writing in her journal about families and wishes and Navy SEALs who opened doors in blizzards. The story wasn't over. It would never be over. Not really. There would always be another family running, another child afraid, another door to open. But tonight, in this moment, it was enough to know that one little girl was safe and healing, that one old couple had their granddaughter, that one murderer was paying for his crimes, that one cabin on a mountain was a beacon for anyone lost in the cold. Marcus had spent 3 years asking why he'd survived when his family didn't. Now he knew. Not because God needed him for some grand purpose, but because a little girl would need him on the coldest night in 30 years. Because broken people would need shelter. Because sometimes the miracle wasn't avoiding the storm, it was becoming the light that guided others through it. His phone buzzed one more time. Dorothy, checking in. Home safe. Emma, asleep with Ranger's photo next to her bed, says she loves you. We all do. Thank you for being family when we needed one most. Marcus typed back. Thank you for knocking on my door. Because that's what it came down to in the end. Someone had to knock. Someone had to open. Someone had to believe that broken things could be mended, and lost people could be found, and families could be chosen as deliberately as they were born into. Emma had knocked. Marcus had opened. And everything else, the justice, the healing, the purpose, the hope, had followed from that single moment of choosing compassion over fear. The fire burned low. Ranger snored softly. Upstairs, Jennifer's boys dreamed of safety. And Marcus Webb, retired Navy SEAL, sat in his cabin on the mountain and knew with absolute certainty that his life had never mattered more than it did right now. Because family wasn't just blood. It was who showed up when the world turned cold. It was who opened doors and said yes, and refused to look away when looking away would be easier. It was a little girl who found her voice, grandparents who refused to give up, a community that chose justice over convenience, and a man who learned that the opposite of grief wasn't happiness. It was purpose. The night was cold, but the cabin was warm. There were people who needed protecting, and Marcus would protect them. It was that simple, that profound, that absolutely, completely right. He'd opened his door in a blizzard, and he'd keep opening it every time, for as long as people needed shelter. Because sometimes being a hero didn't mean saving the world. Sometimes it just meant keeping the light on and the door unlocked, and believing that one person's safety mattered enough to risk everything. Emma was safe. The families would keep coming, and Marcus would keep saying yes. That was enough. That was everything. That was what his wife and daughter would have wanted. For their loss to mean something, to save someone, to turn tragedy into testimony that love was stronger than fear, and light was stronger than darkness, and open doors were stronger than locked hearts. Marcus stood and walked to the door one more time, made sure it was secure but not sealed, ready to be opened when the next knock came. Because it would come. It always did. And he would answer. Always. That was his promise. His purpose. His second chance at being the man he'd always wanted to be. And in a small house across town, a 7-year-old girl wrote in her journal, "Uncle Marcus says family is who shows up. I'm glad he showed up for us. I'm glad we showed up for him. I think maybe we saved each other." She was right. They had. And they'd keep saving each other, one opened door at a time, one safe night at a time, one act of fierce, protective love at a time. Because that's what families do. The ones you're born into and the ones you choose. They show up. They stay. They open doors in blizzards and refuse to let the cold win. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they teach you that your greatest pain can become your greatest purpose, if you're brave enough to let it.